You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Good morning,
Mike.
Chris.
Hey, good morning. Hey, where are you? It looks like you're in your living room?
Well, actually, this is the living room back in December of 2016, but this is a 360 taken at that time. Remember, I have been working on a remodel, and so I put together this video, 360 video, that shows obviously the original design when purchased, and you can actually move around it. It'll be available on YouTube. I'm adding a little bit of ambisonic audio to it. But I wanted to merge it into the different stages of prototyping as well as the final product. I don't know if you've seen it yet, but so it's about, gee, why didn't it start? Here we go. There. So it's about a 2-minute video, give you enough time to turn your head around and look around in it. It looks really great.
Take it all in.
Yeah, it looks really great on a Gear VR or you know, a Daydream, which we're going to talk a little bit more.
And what did you put this together in?
Well, this is actually a couple of products. After Effects, I use a product called Metal and Skybox. Basically, the Skybox plugin set for After Effects for titling. So here's the first one. I used a product called SketchUp, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, and a light up plugin. Here I'm just using the demo version of it to render this in a 360. This is not the best quality. And then this is the Unreal engine. Remember, I walked around in this, but this is its version. And this was really good because this actually gave me, if you notice, there's like a gap in there. I realized at this point the fireplace wasn't going to fit in properly. So I was able to bring this to the attention of the contractors, and they were able to think about how they were actually going to make it look good. And here's where the fireplace was actually installed. As you can see, they recessed it. It actually shows on both sides through the dining room and the living room. Here you can see that we haven't painted yet, but and then we've removed those ugly sconces, or at least we thought they were ugly. And but we do have the wood floor in already.
Hardwood.
Yes. Yeah,
Looks good.
Actually, it's what they call an engineered wood.
Yeah.
And then here's
looks
the final.
Fantastic. Look at that. And then, the way the light, it's just so much warmer in that room. It just looks so much more warm and inviting. And
yeah.
But that mid visual really really helps you visualize, doesn't it?
Oh, I swear by it. So again, occipital canvas is what I'd recommend. You scan your room, you send it to them, they send you CAD files. And then again, to refresh your memory of what it looked like before.
Refresh my memory on how much the canvas cost for the service.
The service itself is $29 per scan, but they have a group pricing. So if you wanted to do your home, you can collect all of them together, and they will stitch them all together for you.
Wow.
I did some manual stitching in order to create this. They will provide you a SketchUp file as well as a was it a DWG or DWX or a DW? Is it a WW? Can't even remember the DWF. One of those. I think it's a DWG. It's a 3D CAD file as well as the SketchUp file, and then they also provide you the original mesh information. So if you just wanted to redo the actual mesh information, it also provides you the textures, and so you can go to town on it. The cool thing about the CAD is that, as you can remember, I imported this into SketchUp, and let me see if I can go directly to the spot. Yeah, boy, I was lucky. So here's a render using the light up. And the cool thing about light up, if you're not familiar with it, there is a cost. It's about $180, but the cool thing is it does work in the free version of SketchUp. But it allows you to what they call photon-based rendering, but it kind of works in real time and actually has like a preview mode that you can actually walk around in the render itself. So you can move around like you can with a first-person shooter and look around in it, and then you can finalize it with a much better, which I had forgotten to do on this one. So I'm re-rendering it, and I'll be putting up a video that's of a better quality. But it's a cool little tool. The problem is it's not for VR. Now, there are some SketchUp tools for VR, but I'm not very I don't find them of good quality, especially when you look at and again, if you remember, I wasn't able to optimize this. SketchUp is not the best tool to use directly in Unreal. There are some things that I learned. We're still in a blend mode here. Okay. But as you can see, quick and dirty, bring it in here. I can set up lights, and both of these products, the light up as well as this, use, what is it, IFE lights. But these are accurate lightings from lighting companies so that you can get a proper throw of light, color temperature for bulbs and so forth. So you can get very accurate lighting. Now, but the important thing is I was able to bring this in there and get in with my HTC Vive and walk around in it and get a very good feeling of what the space looks like, especially this column here. Once the interior was removed, and then I put in a model of the fireplace, the dual fireplace, it's a gas version, I realized this thing doesn't fit right. So I was able to send out some renders, and they were able to look at it, and sure enough, they hadn't thought about it. So it was better than to bring it in and say, oh, geez, I don't know what we're going to do with this. They were able to start thinking about the construction of the framing for it. And as you can see in this image here, they did a pretty good job. And then obviously with our tiling, which we had a few issues with, let me get to it. It actually turned out very much like the original SketchUp version, would you say?
Totally.
Yeah. So, and then also I was able to match tints of the wall, and we went through different variations and to finally decide, of what color we wanted. And, there are tools out there, and there are apps you can get that you can capture an image of your, like a photo of your living room. But the problem is all it does is it removes the chromatic information and then replaces that. It doesn't actually take into consideration lighting. And as you know, there are different color temperatures. The cool thing of these type of applications, you can modify the color temperature and see actually not only the color temperature of the lighting, but also the color temperature of the outdoor lighting, because it varies depending on the season and the time of day. And that really, this was very interesting, because that showed Siobhan said, well, I'm not really happy with this color. And I said, well, it's midday. You want to see what it looks like in the morning. So we're able to vary what it would look like before actually putting it on the wall. And I don't know about you, but Siobhan's old experience was like paint a color swatch of like 2 or 3 feet on the wall itself. So you had to get samples. This way she was able to narrow down samples, still went to the old, because she wasn't truly confident in this yet. And sure enough, we settled on the same colors that I chose in here.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like in the printing world. You do a soft proof and then a hard proof, so like you can do some soft proofs on the computer, and that's going to narrow down your focus a little bit, and then you go on to the hard proof, which is like in your case, painting some swatches on the wall, and but at least you're not experimenting with 20 colors.
Color.
Yeah, exactly. Or 1,000. You're experimenting with 3 or 4 or half dozen.
Yeah, so I was very pleased with the results, very happy with it. Obviously, big kudos. Now, keep in mind with the Canvas software, you do need an iOS device, in particular an iPad, and you do need their structure sensor. These scans. Now, keep in mind the structure sensor is $375. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, because Apple had a lot of items this week. They had WWDC, and they had some really cool stuff, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But my first the theme of today is, did Google turn Daydream into a nightmare?
Yeah, what's that about, Mike? Tell us a little bit.
Well, let's take a look at it. Well, first of all, let's get into some of the news items that I've been reading about. Essentially, Google's virtual ambitions appear to have a slow start, and they dropped the cost. And I don't think this is true anymore. I think they were trying to push a sale in order to get some of these headsets out. But not only do they have a problem getting these headsets out, there isn't a lot of phones that are readily available yet to use Daydream. There are more coming. But as they say, what's the holdup? Obviously, the phones. Here are the phones that are supposed to be identified. And even if the phones do have Daydream compatibility, it's not necessarily the latest build. And that seems to be always an issue with the Android market, is the splintering. So if you want the best and the most current, you have to buy a Pixel phone. Pixel phones aren't cheap, and more importantly, they haven't been readily available, especially the XL. Now, I was able to luckily get an off-white color that, I'll bring it up here with my Uplay Dream Shredder headset. But essentially, I got the white version, and that's not one of their better sellers, but it worked for my needs. And actually, I think it looks kind of cool in this white particular headset design here. But we're going to get into why I have some issues with it and a little story that I'm going to bring up. But because of this, this has been a problem. Now, the other thing is you have to buy their Daydream headset. There isn't any variations, and as you know, I have been developing one that I feel is a better product for the Pixel XL1. It's made specifically for the larger screen. More importantly, it's an open design, so you don't have issues with heating, and then it also uses larger lenses. So I feel like the immersion quality is better. Now, obviously, that's a personal preference, but other people who have tried my headset also seem to agree with it. So because of this, that is an issue. And I've tried to reach out to them and say, hey, I've got this headset. What can I do in order to get it, developed? And they have not expressed any interest. They haven't contacted me. So it's been very disappointing. And I have some of my own personal information I'm going to bring up in a moment. But here's some other issues is that the Daydream View are applications that you see in the store. Now, there's some great free ones, but most of them cost a few bucks. And I don't know about you in the iOS store, but normally you don't shell out, $5 to $10 on an application. That's the problem with the App Store. So I've been literally, I bought a few of them, and they've actually been pretty good. But that's always going to be the blockage. So I think that some of these, like myself, just put out some free ones, but I do a lot of just testing. But I think they should have like one, what do you want to call it? Level, like remember the shareware, you get one free level and then you pay up for the rest of it. I think something like that needs to be done here because I think that puts off, and one of the things, I don't know if this article, but another one says that there's just a limited number of sales. So if you're going to invest this time in the development and your sales aren't really pushing it, yet, you've got this Gear VR out there that supposedly has, 10 times more headsets sold and has a larger ecosystem. If you're like debating on which one at this point, Gear VR might be the direction you would want to go. The other thing is, from a development perspective, especially in the Unreal Engine, it's not tweaked for anything besides ES2. And ES2, OpenGL ES2 is not the best, what do you want to call it? Standard for 3D if you want great graphics. It's kind of the low end, and it's really hard to get some really good stuff. Now, of course, if you look at some of the Google stuff, they all look very cartoonish, and that works great for the ES2. But if you want to get subtle shading and so forth, now obviously there may be some issues with it, and I have found that with some of my own test versions that you can't really do a lot before you start getting a very sluggish frame rate. So the sad thing is I think Daydream is still more cartoonish and creating realistic HTC vibe. And, a lot of people have said that. But Gear VR seems to do a better job, especially in the Unreal market with it. And I've seen some pretty quality stuff there. So on to my major issue. And let me jump to my virtual camera here, create a large image of myself. Now, I'm not going to identify the company. Now, if you remember, one of the things I talked about in developing my headset here was in order to use Daydream, you have to use the controller. There's no way around it. You can't use the cardboard touch control. You have to have the controller. So that means if you buy my headset, you have to buy a Daydream headset, which is about, as you saw there, $79, $89. I think it's like $79 now, that just for the controller. Now, the cool thing about the new Samsung Gear VR controller is that you can buy it separately. Because obviously, if you've already got a headset, you don't need another headset. Well, Google hasn't worked in that approach, obviously, because there's not that many Daydream controllers or headsets out there, but mine will be available soon. But then I found an obscure link to a company, a Chinese company, who has created a compatible Daydream controller. Now, that wasn't specifically its need. It's basically a 3 degrees of freedom Bluetooth controller. And, I'll show it right here. I've hidden the name with my little QR code for my Daydream headset, or excuse me, Dream Treader headset. But essentially, not only does it use batteries instead of a rechargeable, which always seems to discharge very quickly from the Google side. So it uses regular batteries, which I think is cool. And we kind of talked about that with the Oculus handsets using batteries instead of a rechargeable battery. But also, I just think it felt better in my hand. And it has an actual on-off functionality to prevent you from discharging the batteries. Oh, and it goes into a slumber state. But I just felt better, and I was able to move around with it. I thought, pretty good. So I'm thinking, great, I've now got a source. I'll be able to sell this along with my headset. Yeah, and I can't talk about the details from that perspective, but I thought I had a great package here, and I think, in my opinion, it's a better alternative. Well, after I had sent out a tweet showing the combination of my headset and this particular headset, which I'd identified the company, I like a few hours later got an immediate response from the company saying, take those tweets down. We have just been warned by Google that this is an IP violation. So they had thought that this was an open source device, and sadly, it doesn't appear to be. And they demanded that they shut down their operation. In fact, they told me to send back the controller. And I'm like, I'm going to do that. And I've got another one coming directly from the manufacturer. I bought this one from GearBest. But they've literally had to remove any indication that it's Daydream compatible. And anything that is out there, they're requesting that they be sent back to them. And I don't understand this on Google's part. One of the things that made cardboard so popular, even though it was cheap and the quality was poor, is that it was very inexpensive. Basically some cardboard, and then obviously there were some plastic versions that came out, but it was an ecosystem that grew very popular.
But isn't there already kind of like a precedent with like, so that's like Samsung saying you can't have a remote control, a universal remote, right?
Well,
you could go to Radio Shack and buy a universal remote that works with a TV. How can a TV manufacturer say that you can't have a remote that works with the product? That makes no sense.
Well, the only thing I can think of is, even though the controller's technology, and in fact, I have like on Amazon, I bought a Bluetooth 3 degrees freedom. You know, have you ever seen those remotes you use, pointers, controllers?
Yeah.
That they've got Bluetooth, and then they have dongle version for slides in that. And then I also use it for my Android device. They're out there, and they cost about $20. So it's not like this technology is new, but the way that they applied it, obviously they're trying to protect it, because, you know, any headset could be used with Daydream as long as you had a Daydream compatible device. But they are truly trying to lock in their devices, you know, and I can see that, because you want higher performing devices able to run Daydream. I understand that. But the fact is, to prevent you from buying a lower cost of, basically pushing you to buy, in my opinion, an inferior headset and an inferior controller seems dumb.
I could see Google maybe having intellectual property on their logo and use of that, like from a copyright standpoint. So like putting, you know, I know there's some there was like an argument a while back, you know, for the companies that were making aftermarket Apple products. If you wanted to be iPhone certified or whatever, you had to go through their channel to put the Apple logo on your box, which, you know, in the US, it's, you know, there's pros and cons to having the you know, intellectual property protected in that way. But it is what it is. I could see that them claiming some sort of like copyright infringement, but just to say that you can't have a product that's compatible with Daydream, that's totally hogwash to me.
Well,
there's no way that would hold up in court.
Well, well, it actually would, but let's bring up Apple for a moment. They actually have always done something similar. For instance, if you're familiar with the Lightning port, there is a chip embedded in the cables that handshake with the device.
Yeah.
And the only way that you can implement that is through a licensing program with Apple, which is not cheap. But I have
That's why like
Even-
the smallest lightning cable costs like $15.
Well, that's if it is a true lightning cable. Now you can
Sure.
buy ones that just charge for far less. But the other point I want to make is, even if Google does have that, the proprietary function with their controller, why not license it? I mean, I would think a company, let's say in China, who's probably got a ton of Chinese compatible phones that are, there's a couple of Chinese manufacturers who's got Daydream compatible. Why not have them make their own headsets, or hopefully it would be mine, but their own controller, just license it. And like I said, I tried to reach out for them in my own headset, and have got no response from them. And even written to their main director, I can't think of his name. I think his name is Clyde. I don't remember now, but and have no response. And I've written to both his LinkedIn. I think I've tweeted him. I think I've actually emailed him, and have got no response. So if you've reached out to people and they're not responding back to you, even to tell you, sorry, you can't do that. Like, I've spent a lot of development time, so I may bring this to the market, and they may come back and say, please remove that. You're competing with us. And I said, well, I've tried to reach out to you. And I think this is, I think maybe that may be the case with the Chinese manufacturer in the controller, that they just assumed because it was Android that it would be open source, but it is not. So, the point is, reach out to them, try and contact them, but if they don't reach back, what are you supposed to do? And I think, Apple, the Gear VR, and a few others have moved into this gray area in order to control their ecosystems. And you just have to look at, and they said there's like 5 million cardboard devices out there. So just keep that in mind. 5 million is not because they created 5 million cardboard. There was just an ecosystem by Chinese manufacturers, American, that flourished because you had an open standard. And Google just needs to keep that in mind as they move the Daydream forward if they want this to succeed. Unlike Samsung, which has a phone ecosystem, which makes it very easy to create a headset that's proprietary for it, because you have enough phones out there. Google is not in that position, and I think this, sadly, is a mistake. So that's my point. Let's get into the main, or my rant, or whatever you want to call it. Let's get into the news items. I've got some updates from the past, so let's go ahead and move into those real quick.
Yeah, we got a lot to cover today.
We sure do. So
this is like the hot time of year every year. This is the time I look forward to. You got Apple and Oculus, and we got all kinds of stuff to cover today. So let's get to it.
Okay, so let's look at some things from the past. Sadly, I wish they would have contacted me, but this actually came out last week, right before WWDC and WWDC, which I have a few items on, but this is still pertinent. Occipital has a low-cost AR/VR tracking system for all-in-one headsets that I have known for some time, but it's called the Core, or their depth sensing camera. What do they say? Which sells for $3. That's their version now. And then they have the Bridge headset, which we've talked about. But they also have this Core device, which is an OEM product that includes the cameras and an emitter.
We lost Mike. I don't know. This two-factor authentication that Google has been forcing Mike to use, or I don't know if it forces it. It doesn't force me to use it, but at any rate, I don't know why he gets cut out of our podcast now and then. He will get booted out because his phone wants him to two-factor authenticate to come back into the podcast. So there he is. He's back.
Are you there?
Let me guess, two-factor authentication.
No, actually, this is something new. It says, hey, is this you? So I don't know why they're doing that.
You'd think that with their NSA facial recognition algorithms they have, they'd be able to easily identify it's you.
Oh, well, sorry about that. So here's a little video showing them doing some 6 degrees of freedom. They're walking around. Now, this is all optically based with a single camera. But they were
So
mapping
it's
points.
showing you the room dimensions. So you're in VR, but it's showing
they
you
go.
basically kind of like the boundary of your.
Well,
Actually, I
not a,
really kind of like that.
well. What's important, and I don't. Here, hang on.
What do they call it in Oculus when you have like you set up a safety boundary, right, in your space, approach it.
Well,
they call it Guardian.
Right, and there's something similar in HTC. But the point I want to make here, and is he's waving his hand through there, but they've identified points on different planes, both horizontal and vertical.
Okay.
And here they're testing extreme motion. But the point is their library is so mature at this particular point that they're able to track with a single camera and, more importantly, provide occlusion. And what does that mean? That allows them to, here they're actually waving his hand through there and it's not showing up or distorting the camera. But it allows you to bring in 3D objects into the scene, into a real scene, and it knows the boundaries of the current real devices. Look how quickly that moves around without losing tracking. And due to this, it allows to have realistic objects that could walk around.
Mike, are you still there? You just dropped out again. Okay, well, he's showing off this incredible demo that Occipital has, and it's via a TechCrunch article. He has it pulled up. Let's see if I can pull this up for him. That video was kind of interesting. Let me scroll down here to this video. And yeah, it looks like what I kind of find very interesting about it is the fact that it can draw these.
I should be back.
You are back.
Yeah, so I don't know what today is. Obviously, everything crashes or security, but vMix just crashed on me, which has not. It's been fairly stable. It's been a great product. If you're not familiar with it, that's what I use for my streaming production, and I've had really good success over the last 3 years. But they've made some updates that could be the issue. I'm also trying something new, so I'll leave that off for now and wait till we actually get to that moment. I'm using multiple desktops that I'm connected outside my studio to show some things later on, and I'll leave those off for now. Hopefully that was what the issue was. But yes, thank you for it, because I could still hear you, Chris, as I was bringing myself back up. But the whole point is, Occipital has been in this for about 2 years, 2.5 years, which is, like a decade in this industry. But the other thing that, even though this video shows what they can do with a single camera, they also have this core system and a development kit now that allows you to embed it. And with their engines, and they're also providing Android and Windows compatibility. I see some very interesting things with it. And I tried to reach out to them before the show and hadn't heard back from them. Also, I just heard today that if you do have a bridge engine or a bridge device or planning to think about it, remember the new iPhone 8, at least the rumors are that it's going to be very similar in size to the iPhone 7, the smaller, the 4.7, but a larger screen. With that being the case, if the physical format is very similar, I can see the new bridge headset that'll be coming out with it will support that. Now, there's also some unique things on the iPhone 8, at least again in the rumored version of it, that it uses a displacement of cameras on a horizontal plane versus a vertical. And what that will allow them to do is actually track things with parallax. And we're going to get into a little bit later of what they covered at WWDC. And I actually have some demos of my own to show off there. Okay, so let's move in the next one real quick. Since we're on the subject of Occipital, Itsy 3D made its name by creating a 3D capture program. I've used it for a couple of years now. I've scanned you with it, created a little bust of you. Let's see, do I have it around here? Where are you, Chris? Chris is gone. He must have ran off. But this application behind me is a little different. All it takes is the camera in your phone to create a 3D model of your head. It's called 3D Avatar. But they've just come out with a Unity plugin. So you can actually use Unity to capture your image and then apply that to a model. And as you get down here, it'll support this, and you can actually download it now if you sign up as a developer. But it will provide the head can be used for VR, AR, and then at a later time, they're actually going to provide skeleton animation. So imagine having a character that you could add your face to and be able to run around with it. Or let's say a VR, both Facebook, Google, they're all coming out with these collaborative group, what do you want to call them? I don't know. I've forgotten the name of what we call Facebook, but essentially having multiple people, but having to be able to assign a digitized image of your face to a little 3D avatar, I think is a really cool feature. And obviously will give some authenticity to the 3D character. So it's pretty cool. As mentioned, it uses a single camera, like they're showing here in this picture, to capture it. The beta is free. Sign up as a developer, and if you are a developer and working in Unity, I highly recommend it. It's available both for Android and the iPhone. Okay, so let's move on again. Well, this one's more of another rant and grouch on my part. Remember, I have been talking about the what is this? The Vive new headset. Basically take off the elastic band and then get this new cool thing. And I have been waiting. Remember, I've been jonesing about this, if that's still a term today. I've wanted it, and then it became available, or at least I saw a note on it, and like matter of hours, maybe even an hour, it was sold out. And obviously that angered me because I had been looking for this. I went and searched to see where was my notification. I had signed up on various email accounts, nothing. Then to make things, add salt to the wound, I went out to eBay, and sure enough, they're already, see the listing, they're scalping these. You saw it was $99. Here you can buy it for $249. And I've already seen 2 or 3 listings of this. What is up with this? Okay. First of all, why are we sold out already? It's not like you don't have a list of people who said, hey, I want one. What did you make? Like 5 of them, 10? What is it? How much? I don't know how many were sold. I haven't seen the information on it, but I don't think obviously they made enough of these. Just what? So that your scalpers can go out there and sell them for 150% more? This is just ridiculous. And there's like
you found my eBay profile, Mike.
Oh, you're from Kentucky, huh? You're the one.
Oh man, yeah.
Here's one. Oh, and this one's this. Yeah, I might bid for this one. There's a couple of them. So look at it. They're already coming out.
The best way to defeat scalpers, Mike, is just don't buy from them.
But I want one of these.
Well, wait until they're available.
Well, here's a couple that obviously have bids, so this might be a little bit better. But yeah, it's ridiculous. And you're right. I should just hold on. But this is sickening. And again, HTC Vive has been known in the past of just not meeting demand, not really estimating it, and how. And just to me, it baffles me. You know how many people want one. You know how many headsets you've sold. I think you can make a better guess than to be able to sell these things out.
Okay, so here's my take.
An hour.
Here's my take. I've been dealing a lot with agile manufacturing, which is like now the buzzword of our generation. So agile manufacturing. So what's going on right now is for these scalable products where there would be 10 million units in the marketplace eventually or more, right? Like in the case of the Vive, it's a global product. What they usually will do now, and you'll see this with like the drone companies, is they'll have like a tiered release schedule. So they'll release like the first pre-order segment will be like 1,000 units, and they'll ship those, and then they'll get they'll take Sigma statistics. They'll measure the failure rates and the things like that. They'll basically push out a beta live as a production run, and they'll see what kind of problems are going on, rather than having to have a recall on 10 million units, which would ruin even the biggest of companies like HTC. I mean, HTC's got a ton of dough to back products, but
Well, actually, they don't. So that that could be an accurate statement. Now they've had,
it's a smart move.
yeah. Well, they've had images, and they've talked about this since, oh, geez, or not GDC, CES. I mean, this is when they announced it, if I remember correctly. There had been rumors in 2016. So yes, there could be some possibilities. They have, and this is another point I'm going to be talking about later on, the HTC Vive headset is already like in its 4th iteration, and it's already been refined. It's now like almost a pound lighter. So they constantly iterate. So keep that in mind. If you haven't bought one now, you can now get it lighter.
Well, they already have a lot of brand reputation. They already have like a lot of brand value now. The Vive does. And so if they pushed out a crappy product and then had to recall it to save their brand, they don't want to go belly up. So they want to put out a small amount of these things and correct anything that might pop up before they go, and have a global 10 million unit order of these things. So, yeah, and the scalper thing, that's just an unfortunate part. I mean, I guess I've seen some companies, they'll put out developer kit. That's the whole thing with the developer kit, where you are they have a way to verify that you're an actual developer, whether it's like they give you, they usually will do it at a trade show, where so you have to physically be at that trade show to sign up for the first round. And so like or they'll contact you directly if you have content on the store, they usually will pick through a list. But in this case, it looks like it's like a kind of a consumer product. So it's first come, first serve. And, so I don't know. It is the scalper thing is a bummer, but there's also people that are trying to make a buck. They're sitting there poaching the first units. They're out the money, and they're going to sell them at a markup if they can. I was in line. So I was like the first, or my buddy and I were first in line at Walmart when the Switch came out. I drove down there early in the morning and before Walmart opened. And then the lady right behind us, she had no plan of having a Switch or opening it. She was just going to scalp it. So she was just going to add $200 and throw it on eBay, and it's her right to do it. She got up early and was the early bird gets the worm.
Yeah, okay, I don't agree with you. All right. Let's move on. Okay, so this is another little item, and I didn't download the video first, but this is Matterport. We've talked about them. I think we interviewed them as well. They create a camera system, and I'll run the little video here. And not play the video, but essentially it allows you to, here they're showing how this guy comes into the home and will scan it, and as you can see there, but what it allows them to do is actually scan the interior of a home. We just talked about this. So there, it's an automatic tracking camera, and it will take shots. And it literally, and I actually have asked them, it's specifically 3 what do I call it? Connect-like devices that they use to scan the object, provide both a 3D mesh as well as the RGB information to texture it. And they've shown some really good results. In fact, when we were looking for the home here in Portland, this is the one that attracted Siobhan the most, was the ability to look at it. Now he's actually got, a Daydream device to look at it. But there you go. You can walk around. But look at the quality of that.
Yeah.
And now the point is, it is, see the little circles there? The issue with that is they scan at those particular points, and then you can teleport to them.
This is Matterport. Okay. So actually, it's crazy that you brought this up. I actually recently had a home that I was looking at just because it's a manufactured home, and it's 6549peach.com. So the realtors are setting up, when you market a house now, they set you up an instant. And so home3d.us, and I was wondering what the so you open the website, and I'll share my screen here.
Go ahead. Let's finish up this, and then let me.
Yeah,
let's
and so this is the house. They show you the dollhouse. Here's the
go.
house, and you press this play thing, and so this is like the presentation that you're brought into for this beautiful home. This is actually the home. So this is the presentation that you get when you subscribe to these brokers. This is an LA area home. So this first part is a pre-manufactured home, a really awesome option. And they have this like 3D scan thing, and you can even do this in, it looks like they have VR mode for this this Matterport thing, and they do a whole walkthrough of the whole house, and it's like, looks like it's in 3D kind of, and you can
No, it is actually in 3D. It's actually a mesh with RGB textures mapped over it. And you know, I asked them when we interviewed them is, how do you get such good quality textures? And at that time, they were using a standard Connect camera, which I think was only 720p, which brings us to what we're going to talk about here. So let me jump back to my own screen. So
yeah,
the Matterport Pro 2 3D is actually a 4K version of the screen. So now you can get even higher resolution visuals. So if you're in the market of real estate, or what I was doing, home design, you can work with this, and this will create the ability of not only scanning, but providing 3D measurements and a 2D layout.
what a presentation that you can have for your house now.
Oh, or yeah. And there are already companies who are buying these units and then, you know, farming out their services to real estate agents. So you don't necessarily have to go buy one. There are people that you can
Hire
rent services or hire, and or rent one of these units. So what is in the 4K unit? So essentially you have the output panel pixels is 134.2 megapixels in an equirectangular. That's 132. Normally 8 to 16. The Gear VR, I think, has 22 megapixel. Can't remember. So this is like 6 times more than that, a little bit over that. Expert images at 8092 by 452. That's pretty impressive. 4K full glass. But the whole point is they have replaced the cameras that are currently in there with a with some high resolution RGB. So the mesh information doesn't have to be that detailed, but the textures on top of it obviously are very important. So I'm really looking forward. You can probably go out there right now and get some demos of it. We have shown their mobile VR app, and I don't know if we've talked about it, but the Google Tango system also works with it. So you can literally walk around in the environment using the mobile phone. I don't think they have an HTC or an Oculus version yet. I think they said they were working on it. But they do have something for Tango, and more importantly, the new Asus. What do you call it? I can't think of the name of it now. The Zen phone, which I'm really looking for. It's going to be released later on this month in Taiwan, and will be coming to the United States in July by Verizon. I will be the first in line. I'll camp out. No. Otherwise I won't get one, but I plan to get one of those for development and use. Obviously I got a special version of my headset for it, but yes, would be a great device for that. You can bring people in and track it, and they're showing you in that demo there, since it uses an iPad, it's wireless. You set it up, and then you stand behind, obviously, to prevent yourself being in the image, and then it just automatically rotates and makes scans, and then brings it to the iPad, and then you can upload it immediately. And there she's actually working with it, and then there's your final results.
So it's about $4,000 for the scanner, $4,000 for the scanner, and then they have different monthly plans.
Yeah, and that's for the service.
And they say it takes about an hour and a half to do a 2,000 square foot home. And you could do 11 spaces per month for $150 a month. So this is a viable business because I think you could easily charge $500 to do this, to do a service. So you could pay for it, and you could pay for the scanner pretty quickly.
Yeah,
depending on how many people want. I mean, high-end spots, this could draw like if you live in a place that's real desirable. I could see this really happening especially in the high end, when it's hard to show a house. When it's owner occupied, it's a high end house, and it's not just going to be the clients have to be vetted before they're allowed to go there. So for privacy, celebrity homes, that kind of thing. I could see this being a totally discreet and easy way that you just tack that on.
Well, and I'm pretty sure this already happens in LA and larger cities.
Yeah, that home I just showed you, I don't know who lives there, but it was some sort of director of photography or something, because they put that home on where they blew up the home in the last Die Hard. So it was that actually was used as a movie set. So it's down in like Pasadena or something, and it's a pretty famous spot now. But so I could see this being a totally viable business, that for $5,000 you're up and running. You're a little mobile platform, and this is what you do to get into a business for $5,000. That seems like a no-brainer.
Yep. Well, obviously it's part of my brain, which is very small. So even little brains can get into this.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's move on. Chris, you have something dramatic to show us today.
Oh yeah. So we did. We had a big week. We had Apple, and then the biggest one of all, in my opinion, was Formlabs. So if you don't already know, meet the Fuse One. The Fuse One is the power of SLS. They literally are taking what is a $250,000 machine, and they are offering it for $10,000. If you haven't watched the keynote, go over to Formlabs, watch the keynote. This is their SLS machine. It's 165 by 165 by 320 build volume. And those that are not familiar with SLS, SLS doesn't require any support or bed, and it lays the powder, and then you recover the unused powder, and you can recycle. You can use 50-50 new, 50% used material to start your next job. And so they have this whole mixing system. They have a clean out station. If you want the whole package, it's $20,000. For the machine, it's $10,000. But what's beautiful about SLS is there's no layer lines, so it's similar to SLA, but you actually get to print 2 different types of nylon.
Yeah, I'll drop to my camera to give you an idea. And Chris, as much as I appreciate the performance of your FDM, I have printed some things in. Here, let me jump.
All flexible part, like anything that needs to have living hinges, flexible parts, that kind of thing. SLS is gonna just outperform. Yeah, there you go. So they started reservations. They're $1,000 for reservations. They're going to start shipping beta units later this year. I put my reservation in about an hour after they went live with it. So I will have one of these in house. This year it was kind of in between a couple different machines for me for my next step to kind of step into. And the 2 top machines I was looking at were the Mark Forged, which I still plan on kind of going, keeping my eye on the Mark Forged. But as soon as this one came, it's a no-brainer for a service bureau like me to have SLS, because basically it's my main, the nylon business is now the bread and butter of what I do. And so I couldn't imagine not having a machine like this, especially at the price point that it is. So they've literally taken a $250,000 machine and made it $10,000 or $20,000 for the infrastructure. Typically you needed a $250,000 machine, and then you needed another $100,000 at least in kind of a clean room ish area if you had an EOS, like an EOS sintering machine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what they've done. I don't know what they did to control the combustion of the material, and
I was
because
going
a
to
lot of
ask you
times
about that.
yeah, so I don't know too much other than there's a tested video and there's some videos up showing off kind of their capability. The first thing you got to do is you got to go watch the keynote. The keynote is absolutely amazing. I think Max and his team at Formlabs, they're kind of like on the cutting edge, and that whole little East Coast Silicon Valley, I call it, of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and all these MIT people. I think they're definitely riding the wave right now on the bleeding edge. And but I think Max is a total leader. He's gone through some turmoil, so he's experienced some turmoil with the whole thing with 3D systems over the last couple of years. We've covered that on the show, but the machine itself is absolutely incredible. Some of the innovations that are behind it, and the removable bed cartridge. So you basically build a build cartridge, you pull it out, you put a new one in, and it only fills up with material as it needs, to use, and it actually lowers the part in, and you can be processing one while the other one's in there going. So there's a lot of benefits to the whole SLS.
So what is the processing
sintering?
So I know it's sintering, but
yeah.
as you said, this is a nylon powder-based system that has
so they have this big hood thing that you blow the part off with air, and it recovers the material into a cartridge, the same cartridge that you see on the top of the machine here in the picture. I'll
bring it back up.
Yeah, so this cartridge here in the top, right? This is the actual material cartridge that has a nylon powder that has these little spheres that are 50 micron spheres of nylon, right? And so that's your raw material that gets dispersed by the I can't remember what they call that, the little flood bar type thing that comes across. Okay. And so that lays a 50 micron layer of these balls, and then it sinters, and it's so after you're done, you pull the thing out and you put it into the recovery station. You blow your part off, or the parts that are in the build envelope off, and it recovers it into another one of these. Then you take that and you put it into, they have it's called a mixer, and it has a new one of these that has new material, and then the one that you just recovered the material, and then there's one in the bottom, and it mixes the two together, so you end up with a 50-50 mixture. They said really it only affects, you can use more used material if you want, and that's when the machine is going to be open that way. They're not going to lock it down like some manufacturers. And you can recover more. It just will affect the surface finish. And so the other beauty of this whole thing is the powdered nylon is, even though it's not even a widely available material quite yet, it's still super cheap. So it's a lot cheaper even than filament. So it's going to drive the cost of per part way, way, way down. And this is actually going to start to compete with injection molding and other kind of high volume methods. And again, the keynote was fantastic because he kind of tackled a lot of the problems that we're seeing, where you might have, there's a lot of products, the majority of products out there are not 10 million unit products. They're in this 100,000 unit, and the recovery of your tooling cost is absolutely the number one concern. So this whole agile manufacturing, bridge manufacturing is absolutely surging right now, and this is going to be definitely on the forefront of keeping up with consumer demand.
Yeah, and actually, even though this is a nylon sintering, even metal sintering is blown because it allows you to create molds very quickly. So even if you still need it injected molded, as you're probably aware of and what you've been working with, the whole process has changed. And yes, and I'm finding this out for myself in doing looking for bids on manufacturing my headset, that you're paying for the molds, and then you have to pay for the number of units in order to as you said, break even. So that could be
right. And Formlabs even has. I actually was contacted this week for a job that hasn't quite moved forward yet. So I haven't actually got any of this in house. But for my Form 2, Formlabs already offers a high temp resin. And it has a super high heat deflection of 289 C. So low pressure injection molding, you can actually use the high temp resin as your injection mold because it's not a plastic, it's a resin. They can make a resin that's suitable for up to 289 C at, it's a really it's becoming a really viable thing for tooling, and it says you could use it for like several hundred products if you were going to just even if you just wanted to test the viability of a hard mold, a tooled mold like out of steel. This is just a great way to kind of supplement it to test the viability. So they're already ahead. So I didn't know this, but Formlabs has actually sold more production printers of the Form 2 than any other 3D print companies. I had no idea.
Well, I'm
25,000 units.
As you know, I started with the Form 1 and loved it. You actually have the Form 2. You're now going to have, what's this new model called?
It's called the Form Fuse.
Form
the Fuse 1.
Yeah, they've just grabbed this market and won't let go of it, and it's great. And obviously, for those of you who are out there, we got one viewer. Even though he's our master print whisperer, he does run a service bureau. It's called Parts Oven in Paso Robles. And look him up online. If you need parts, as you know, he's the expert. I use him when I need parts. He's great at getting them out much quicker than Shapeways and others. And, obviously.
Yeah, so SLS, again, so like the recent Shapeways, what they do is they wait until the whole build envelope is full. Because the cool part about SLS is you can nest parts unlike any of the other technologies because it doesn't require support, and you can maximize your build envelope with stacked as many parts in there. So what Shapeways does is they wait until that whole build envelope is completely filled up, and then they send it over to the machine. And that machine could take, I don't know, I've never run one of those machines, but I have a feeling it could take a couple days to sinter that whole thing, and then they have to clean them and separate them, and they have to map out which ones go where, and they have to double check it all. So I know because I've had clients that order through other service bureaus like Shapeways, and it can take like 3 weeks to get a centered part.
Well, here's a tip because, as you know, I use Shapeways. Smaller parts, white or black now. You can get what do they call it? Rapid service. It's 50% more. Is it? No, it might be even less than that now. But you can get them, and you can get the parts in 2 to 3 days. But obviously, you have your shipping on top of that. And I normally, if I really need something, go overnight. However, that's for smaller parts. For instance, the band here is at the max capacity. I tried to have you print one out, and it's long, so it's a problem. And I found that band being printed through them does take about 3 weeks, like you said. It's because it's irregular in size, whereas the other one, you can stack a bunch of smaller parts and get them back quickly. That's not the case. Also, the color parts take longer as well, so keep that in mind. But obviously, having somebody like you with a smaller version of this, there's more flexibility. And as you know, I've said before, you've saved my butt a couple of times getting me parts in half the time of Shapeways. And that's big kudos to you on that. And that allowed me to actually create some cool footage. You missed it last week. I'll send you a link to it. But the Confefe meets Frank little ambisonic test audio video that I put together for you was an example of using that print from you with the Zoom H2N, which is an ambisonic recorder. It's low cost, but works effectively. So again, thank you with that. All right, let's get into our other news items. You mentioned that. Let's see. I've got also an item that I want to bring up, and this actually will cover 2 items. So let me bring it up. There is a company, jump to it, that I found on the web. As you know, I work with the Unreal gaming engine, which is great for VR, and I think it's a better quality engine. It's got some unique features and can pull your hair out on some of them, but they've refined it. They're working for it. But I found this company called Pulse Design Group, as you can see behind me, who designs what do you want to call it, architectural work for healthcare systems, in particular surgery rooms. And this, as you can see over there, is very high tech. But what was very interesting to me is how they have applied the Unreal Engine, and I've got a little video to show, which I'll do right now. Shows how they visualize their designs in there we go. I apologize. I was talking again over it, and the audio was obviously really loud. So let me jump back to a little scene here and stop it. So essentially, what they've done is they create a little plugin, or actually a script, that allows them to embed themselves with video. But they said the tracking and the frame rate was horrible, and we're really looking for Unreal to do this. And if you mentioned, I have worked or tried to create a demo of this. It's not very easy to do with the Unreal. Unity has embraced this a little bit better. But more in particular, here is basically a VR example. They've taken their stuff. This is an actual model in Unreal, and that she's walking into. Imagine walking into something like this. It's just stunning. And so I've reached out to the guy. He's busy, but I'm hoping to have him on the show to talk about how he's done this. As you saw, was it the early? Yeah. So here's a scene where they're actually inside the room itself. Here they're outside looking into the building. But as you can see, the Unreal Engine is really starting to explode in the AEC world because of its ability to create photorealistic VR presentations. And I really look forward to that. One of the goals that I have before the end of the year is to get enough funding to create a large 40-foot by 40-foot kind of warehouse type tracking area, so that you can literally walk around in a full environment without having to basically teleport. And so it's a little expensive right now, but that kind of segues into my next item here, if you don't mind me moving into it. Kind of skipped it. Someone's spinning their arms there a little bit. Yes,
No,
I'm running.
Telling you, go ahead.
Okay. So one of the other things that was mentioned this week, like you said, there's a lot of things. SteamVR has basically put out this note about their, what do they call it? Their project line. I can't remember what they call it, but essentially their timeline for this new version of their sensor to be used in, as they call it, their version 2 lighthouse or tracking devices. But the tracking devices are one part of it. You also have sensors, and here they show where they're at right now, this TS3633 and then the 42332, and it's the ASC or ASIC and the validation, which they don't see to be available until 2018. But what will this provide for you? The sensors themselves will allow you to use more than 1 or 2 base stations. So what this means is that you can set these up in a larger area. And this is very important because since the Lighthouse technology is reasonably priced, you could probably, for about 1/10 the price of some of the other tracking solutions put together a much larger area for the HTC Vive. And as you know, they've also been working on a wireless device so that all you need to do is have the headset and the battery pack and the wireless, and the actual computer system is elsewhere. So you would be able to track a larger area, walk around in it at a much more reasonable price. The caveat behind this is once you start implementing these sensors in devices, they will no longer be compatible with previous. So if you get a SteamVR tracking 2.0 system, as you can see here, it will only sync with this new TSR 4231 chipset. And you know what? I apologize to my audience out there. I did not switch screens. Chris, I need a producer to catch these little things. Okay, I apologize again. So the timeline shows that this won't be available in 2018. Here's the little image that I was talking about. SteamVR Tracking 2.0 will only work with the new ASIC TS4231. The tracking 1.0 will work on the previous versions. So if you're making sensors, more importantly, if you're going to be getting the new light stations, they will only work with the new devices, which means probably in 2018, there'll be a new headset. And I have a feeling, because Samsung has also announced a 2K by 2K AMOLED screen, which means two of these together will give you a 4K between both eyes. And a lot of people are excited about that. We can now have 4K imagery, which will reduce, and since I have an LCD version of a 4K, it does substantially reduce the screen door effect, and we are getting closer and closer to creating a realistic environment that we can walk around in. So I'd say by 2018, we're going to see a new headset with a new tracking system and have a larger area to work in for a very reasonable price. So there's my update on HTC. Obviously works hand in hand, and I'll jump back to the screen with this company of creating environments that you can walk around in. My goal is to create a larger area to walk around in, and we have a lot of great architectural renderers out there, and hopefully we'll have this guy on in 2 weeks. All right, Chris, what's the next item on your end?
Okay, coming back to Form Labs, let's again, got to just go watch the keynote, but this is
Make sure you have it in the show notes.
It is.
Okay.
This is another thing that they announced was the Form Cell, which is something that they're working on. And make sure you switch to me. Form Cell is an automated 3D print production line powered by the Form 2. And they're looking for development partners now. What it basically is a so I'll just let the video run here. So here's the Form 2, obviously we know. And one of the biggest things about Form 2 is the labor involved, because you've got to wash the parts in isopropyl alcohol. So they have announced, last week, they announced their washing station and their UV curing station, where you never the part never has to leave the little build platen that they have, which those build platens are pretty cheap now. And then this is Form Cell, which is a modular system where you could run a fleet of Form 2s. One user could essentially run 20, 30 or more machines, and it fully automates the process all the way from the build. So the robot arm comes, brings the part out, puts it over into a washing station, and it's fully hands-off, puts it in the curing station, and then puts it on a rack for shipping. So this is the Form 2, or this is the Form, and then they have a piece of software that lives in the cloud that helps you manage all of your printers right from an online web portal, which they already kind of have. So I can control. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah. So you can already kind of manage your Form Labs machines from right in the cloud. You can track your prints. You can see the status of your printer. You can see material usage. You can calculate, do all your calculations right from a nice online interface, but they're stepping it up even more to show you which machines are green light, which machines are red light. You can add machines as you need. It's cellular manufacturing, and they have a whole you can actually contact them and build your form cell out. So this would be if you were going to build a whole fleet, and so far they kind of showed it off. They just previewed it. And then they have, so for the Form 2, here's the wash and cure. This is what the wash and cure systems look like. And again, these just work. So this is the washing system that kind of washes the part, and then they have a curing system. And these go together, and they're not cheap. These systems, the form wash, I guess it's only $500, and then the form cure, I think is like $800, $700 for the cure.
Yeah, I saw that the other day.
Yeah. So, but what's nice is that the curing system is completely optimized for the material you're running. So you just put in what material you're running, and it adjusts the nanometer wavelength and the heat inside the chamber. So it rotates it around. So it's a little bit fancier than your traditional nail bed curing solution. And then the washing. One thing I've realized very quickly with the Form Labs machine is it's really easy to pull a part that you just printed out, throw it in the isopropyl bath, and accidentally forget about it. And then what you end up with is a part that is really flexible, way more flexible than it should be. So what I think it might be worth the investment to invest in the Form Wash and the Form Cure. But these also fit into that Form Cell machine, because the robot will obviously pull it right out of the machine, out of the Form 2 machine, and put it directly in. And then I could see later on down the road, they're obviously going to kind of roll out a system probably for the fuse, I imagine, that's very similar.
Very cool.
Kind of cool stuff going on at Form Labs. Big news.
I know. Well, I'm glad that you're investing in it. Maybe I'll get a few more bucks. I'd really like to get that centering system. Since I'm no longer in the service bureau market, I'll leave that up to you. Let you just get it and then buy your parts. All right, let's move on to my next item. And this is a little excerpt from the little demo at WWDC. And if you don't know what that is, that's the Apple Developers Conference that was held earlier this week, actually Monday. But this is Industrial Light Magic showing off what was a big announcement that Apple is actually going to be supporting VR via the HTC Vive. The Oculus was not mentioned, on a Mac. But more particular, to get developers back onto their platform, as I know, other than Unity, which is now also cross-platform, meaning you can develop on Windows, I've had no need to really go back to it unless I'm developing in iOS. But now with the newer machines, and more importantly, can you hear me over? Did I leave it? Is it low enough?
Yeah, it's low enough.
Okay.
Perfect.
So here Unreal is giving a demo. She's back there, and actually listened to her yesterday talk about this, which she's in front of the green screen. Now, this is what's interesting is that this is Unreal. They've been working on their own plugin to do what they call mixed reality video. And this should be available from what I've seen in the forum in version 4.17, which they say will be in the fall, hopefully a little earlier to us developers. But the cool thing is that she's using the new tools, and I've worked with these before, and that's the new interface that allows you to actually design and move things around while you're in the VR space. Now, I found the earlier iterations of this to be pretty clumsy, but here she actually interacted and actually activated fire on the TIE fighter there. And now she's bringing up actually the assets window. So she just brought in a device. Now she's actually looking at it. It's kind of cool.
Great. All right. Can we go wide?
Sure. I can grab onto little two hands.
It's so funny. She made a comment. She stumbled
I
there.
can also use this to rotate the world around me.
Now she's moving the controls to move around in position. Now she brings another TIE fighter in there.
Thanks to the more than 5.5
And she can
teraflops
position
of
it.
GPU performance,
And what she's showing there is you can actually use both controllers to expand and contract
Right. Can you have a squadron of those flying
scale
overhead?
it, and then move it around
over
in
there on
3D
the
space
horizon.
while she's in the VR environment.
So over there by the castle.
Right. Perfect. Okay.
And I played with this, and like I said, the earlier versions of it were clumsy and didn't have all the tool set, but they've worked better. More importantly, she can also activate, once she's got this all set up, let's see, she can actually, look who it is.
Nice.
That just sounded like I
Really
something
good.
in my throat.
Going closer.
It's really cool how Metal 2 unlocks Unreal's advanced.
Unreal, use the force.
Wow, yeah, really nice. All right, let's play this scene from here.
Okay.
Now she's setting the scene. So if you remember, Unreal has the ability to create matinees or their new thing that allows you to do presentations in real
upset.
time.
That's the third one this week.
And this obviously is from her first person perspective, but then they jump out. There she is.
I'm glad he didn't
She
see me
moves out of the
there.
way, which I thought was kind of funny.
Don't be so sure about that.
So the cool thing is that this was all done within the engine and run interactively.
All right, actually, let's
while
stop
she's
it
doing
right there.
That was a close one.
So pretty fun little demo. This was obviously released at WWDC. The tools will be available to developers right now if you want to go out to GitHub and build it yourself.
It's really nice to
And
see
then
an
the
iMac
actual
rendering
build
this
should be
level of
later out in the
graphics
fall. So if
VR
you're
mode at a smooth
working
90
with the
frames a
Mac
second.
OS systems,
Really great.
this
All
will
right,
be
thank you, Lauren.
available. You'll need a newer Mac, and also you'll need their little Firewire 3. No, not
Metal
Firewire.
2 and Unreal
Thunderbolt 3
Epic's Unreal Engine
system,
will enable the next
which is
generation
a little
storytellers.
module which I'm going to
We use
jump
this
into
technology in
right
our
now.
filmmaking every day for virtual set scouting, for art direction, and shot design.
And this was a article from Engadget behind me. Apple is the perfect anti-VR test case. And I'll get into this AR demo here in a minute. But essentially, they showed off using obviously the HTC Vive, but they have this. Here's their new, I guess it has somewhat of a black finish, but they have a new iMac Pro, which looks pretty cool, but it is somewhat pricey. But what I was hoping to show, and maybe it's in the next one, let's see, is it here? No. Is that they have this little box now that you can hook up to some Mac Pros, anything with a Thunderbolt 3 connection that supports a AMD video card and allows them to provide VR support for the HTC Vive. And all this will be coming out in the fall. So if you're a developer and want to stay on your Mac OS instead of having to jump to Windows, they are now going to be supporting that. It's interesting. You can read this article in Engadget, but they feel it's like, as I said, the anti-VR test case. You know, here, yes, there's some support for it, but mainly for developers. And, you know, they may have been too little too late. But it was still a cool demo, I think. So let's go ahead and move right into the next demo. And this is called the Wingnut, also our little favorites from Epic or Unreal were part of it. How's the level on this?
Good.
Okay. Can I talk over it? Do you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so, you know, here he's providing a presentation. And they'll actually go on stage. And this, I think, was the coolest thing. And I immediately had to download all the tools to do it myself. You do need to have a iPad or iPhone device running iOS 11. And keep this in mind. It's only a developer's beta, so you have to sign up as a developer to get it. There'll be a public beta later on this month. And you also need the latest Xcode developer, which I think is now on, I want to say 9. I can't remember. But you need those tools. Look at that. Isn't that kind of neat? So this is what he's seeing on his iPad.
Yeah, I liked this part. This is like the one part that I thought was really cool.
So he's moving around. Now keep in mind, this is only horizontal. You can actually, I've looked into the code now, you could actually modify that to show vertical plane. But he's using basically a single camera to track a horizontal plane. And then as you can see there, he's moving around and looking at it from different options. And as you can see, those little characters there. So some people complain, well, you're going to have the same issue of you're holding a device in front of you. How long can you do that? This isn't very practical. You're going to need to be able to put in a headset, which I will be able to tell you can work because I did it a couple days ago, and I'll talk about that during my my tech closet rummaging section. But look at this. This is awesome.
Yeah, it is. I thought that was really cool. Because you could play a game in your room with the either with the iPad or with some sort of goggles like the HoloLens. I thought that the concept is the part that was really cool. But you could play around a table, let's say, with friends. So you could definitely play this in a multiplayer setting.
Sure, shouldn't be any reason for that. And,
Right.
And the AR kit, it seems fairly easy to work with. Now, this is a combination of AR kit and scene kit, but I played with it a little bit and did a little demo. But more importantly, this is the Unreal plugin. So if you're already working with Unreal, you just need to, you can download it on GitHub and immediately bring it in. But keep in mind, it is a special build of Unreal. So if you've never worked with GitHub, it's a little tweaky, and you actually have to build this on a Mac OS, which for me was a little bit difficult because I didn't have the experience that I do in the Windows environment. But still, it worked pretty cool, and I thought it was a great demo. And surprisingly, the tools, especially in Unity, which I'll be showing my own demo, was fairly easy to set up. Just make sure you get all the proper downloads, which I'm going to go through in my section. But this is an article on Verge breaking down the Apple's augmented reality platform. And what's interesting, they do make a reference that even though you can use the camera, unlike Tango, which can also do 3D scanning, and they do bring up the occipital, as they call the separate peripheral, the structure sensor. And as we showed earlier, even the latest SDK from occipital, which can do occlusion, will probably have some advantages and by using the AR kit as like a foundation, because currently they have to do all that from scratch. The AR kit works off of Metal, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit, Metal 2, and with that higher performing graphics and as they call it, SLAM capability, which occipital has always had to do from scratch. So having that built in is just going to add even more benefits to the occipital market. And more importantly, you can do some rudimentary AR with tracking or fairly good stable tracking. And I'll show an example again later on. So I thought this was pretty cool. And more information, here's a little talking about the Metal 2, which is very important if you're going to be using VR. The most important thing is that it can drive a separate GPU. And if you're not familiar, Metal provides some great performance, like what is it in the Windows market? No, I can't even remember the name of it. And we've talked about Vulkan. These are basically low-level APIs. I can't remember what it is in the Windows market. Geez, maybe it'll come to me. But essentially, it provides a Mac OS equivalent, and some people think that it actually might be better. It's up for debate. I wish they would have embraced Vulkan. That way it's available, but supposedly there is a Vulkan to Metal wrapper. So if you are developing in Vulkan, which is an open source, low-level API, both on Windows and Linux, that you still will be able to bring it over and use it on a Mac OS. So it'll provide better performance for video as well as 3D graphics and, as we now know, VR. So pretty cool things. I'll have more to talk about later on when I work with it a little bit more in the upcoming months. So where are we at? I think we're at the point. Hey, I think it's up to you, the Print Whisperer. And man, you've got some text.
Well, I did have one medical thing that I wanted to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
I agree with you. I apologize for that. Yes, bring that up.
This
please.
is a amazing new thing. I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but it's embodied.com, which is embodied is with instead of an E is a 3, so it's embody3d.com. and they have this amazing free CAD to 3D. So basically, you know, I've been working. I've been doing a lot of bone models as of late for veterinary pre-op planning, right?
And we've talked about
We've
that.
talked about it.
Hopefully
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot.
encourage the
And
vet to come on.
typically, yeah, and the vet, you know, my close friend and colleague here that does the bone models, he uses a program called Osirix, which is Mac based, and obviously we've covered Slicer many times on our show. This is a new thing called democratized, and it converts your scans to models. They have a workflow. You basically upload it. Here's a video explaining the process. You upload your DICOMs.
So it's cloud-based?
And it's cloud-based.
Cool.
But it spits out these super clean single-part models.
Wow.
And it's supposed to be really rad. So I'm gonna try it out. I'm gonna do a sample data set. I haven't had a chance to use it quite yet, but and you got to be logged in. You got to sign up. It only takes about 2 minutes to do the whole thing, and they're doing beta, and I don't. It's free for now, so I imagine eventually they'll probably want to monetize it, of course. But it makes CT scan data to an STL file that's 3D print ready, and it takes out all the other steps. So typically, right now, what I do is I have to have the surgeons or the medical professionals, they turn them into an STL, they send them to me, and then I take them into Space Claim or another app like that and clean them up, because then they have to be wrapped and made watertight, and the thin features and the needs to be removed. But this looks like a really great one-step way to do it, where you just go straight from DICOM right to an STL that's 3D printable, and it only takes about 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, obviously, if I can get the demo up and running, one of the things that I have done, obviously, is 3D print items. How do I look to you? Is my audio okay?
Yeah. You're looking
Okay.
good.
All right, because I'm having to do an update to my Mac or iOS TV or whatever they call the stupid thing. I changed all my IDs to match NeoDVR, and this device I didn't change. So I may be showing the screen again. Okay, but the whole point is, what I see a marriage is either VR or AR to show off models, and hopefully you'll be able to explore this as well with an iPad. But a vet can basically use this, or even a medical physician, to look at a model, and as you said, work with maybe another client or a patient or another physician, a consultant, look at the same model and walk around it and compare it, and or using a VR goggle headset to be able to move up to it. And having these tools to be able to take DICOMs and immediately create 3D models from it, I think is extremely important. Obviously, they're looking at it from a 3D fabrication standpoint, but I think there's a step that needs to go before that, and that's actually providing the ability to visualize, make adjustments, look at it, compare it. Maybe, let's say if you're replacing a bone, since you already had the keratin skeletal structure, to be able to fit it properly, look at it before even touching a printer. And so I think the marriage of these kind of tools, AR and VR, are going to be extremely important in medical, as well as your type of services of fabricating real objects. And we know that there's a lot of important uses for that as well. Oh, well. Okay, Chris, you have some good information to cover in the Print Whisper. So put on your mask.
Okay. Time and time
Print
again.
Whisper.
Okay, so time and time again on this show, I stress that knowledge is the single biggest investment any entrepreneur or person should be making. So never stop investing in yourself. And it doesn't have to be expensive, doesn't have to cost money. You know, luckily today we have YouTube, the internet, we have the library that you can go to and you can rent, and you can further your knowledge, and it doesn't take any money or very little money. It just takes time. So, you know, a lot of us, you know, we go home and we like to tune out, and you can very easily get stuck in the downward spiral of just going on Netflix or Hulu or wherever you're at and just watch TV and be real unproductive with your time. So the biggest kind of segment you have of your time. The biggest resource you have, the most scarce resource that any human has, is time. And so you got to set some time aside every day for yourself and to better yourself, and whether it's the gym time or whatever you're doing. And it doesn't have to be a chore. So a lot of times, you know, when we set that time aside, it's like, oh, we got to study calculus and mathematics or something that doesn't really necessarily interest you. It doesn't have to be like that. You're doing it wrong if it does seem like a chore. So maybe math isn't your thing, and maybe advanced biochemistry isn't your thing, but maybe playing piano is. Who knows? You got to experiment and try it out. So find something you like, and it also matters on the learning method. So some people are visual learners, auditory learners, you know, there's all kinds of learning styles. So find one that works for you and go there. And so I want to talk about a book that I just finished. It's a really great book. And it's called Bold: How to Go Big, Make Bank, and Better the World. Came out last year. Finally had a chance to read it. It's a must read for anyone in the makerspace, launching a product, investing in exponential technologies, because the book covers all the major exponential technologies, or most of the major exponential technologies going on. And the tools and tips in the book are absolutely invaluable. And I thought I knew a little bit about technology, and there was dozens of new insights about crowdsourcing, crowd supplying, exponential technologies in general. So you can find Bold: How to Go Big on Amazon. It's also on Audible if you like to listen to books. I like to listen to books. I know Mike likes to listen to books. You're a big Audible guy. I know you listen to a bunch of books. I listen to books constantly when I'm in the car, you know, whether I'm commuting anywhere. So here it is: Bold: How to Go Big, Create Wealth, and Impact the World. If you're interested in 3D printing, if you're interested in Arduino, if you're interested in Kickstarter, SpaceX, or, you know, the ongoing space race that we're still very much in, if you're interested in the internet or decentralized technologies, this book has a lot to offer you. These guys, the guys that wrote it, it was co-authored by Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler, and they had written a book a couple of years back called Abundance. I still haven't read that yet, but I've read synopsis of it, and it's on my reading list now. And it is really an abundant time we live in. It's a challenging time, but this book covers a lot of really exciting things. So highly recommend it. And I also just wanted to reiterate to invest in the knowledge of yourself.
Pretty cool, Chris. And totally agree with you. Yes. You know, you made a good point, and I thought this was very interesting. And Shimon and I have been watching Grimm, which is an okay show, but I don't know if you heard about it, but essentially it was filmed in Portland. So it's been kind of fun to be able to watch a fantasy show based in Portland. Well, we're 2 episodes away from completing the entire run of this show because it just ended this year. But I thought to myself, how many shows are out there on Netflix and Amazon and Hulu that you can like binge on for like seasons? And I'm thinking, you know, this could be a real problem for people who, you know, can't get away from the TV. I mean, in the past, you could turn on TV. At least there were commercials to get yourself up to get something to eat or something.
Yeah, to break you away. Yeah, for sure.
And that doesn't even exist per se. And,
I know.
You can just, you know, I remember, you know, actually Portlandia did a little funny when Battlestar Galactica was available on Netflix, and you could literally just binge on the multiple seasons of that, which I guess people did to catch up with it. But then Breaking Bad, I mean, there's all kinds of things that are available now and to do that with. And obviously you hear about people what they, you know, I guess create, what do they call it? TV binging now.
Binge watching. Yeah, for sure.
And you didn't really hear about that in the past. So I don't know, it seemed kind of funny. Oh, well, so let's talk about some more fun things. As mentioned, one of the things I wanted to talk about as I was rummaging in the tech closet was, and let me go ahead and bring it up real quick. I'm going to do something cool, so hopefully it doesn't break it again. I have 2 of my workstations set up. So I'm going to go ahead and show a display of, let's see, from, as I call it, the dark overload. My new workstation that I've set up. It's not using the new Intel chips that you brought up. It's still on a Kaby Lake or Kaby Lake. I don't know how it's pronounced, but so it's a fast machine. It's got 64 gigs in it now. So I have just slowly migrated over from a machine I've had for 4 years. It's funny how machines can keep working. So this is this product I was talking about called Light Up, and I apologize, this is a gigabyte screen that just popped up, and since I don't have control of the mouse, I can't close it. But this is using SketchUp and this tool called Light Up. If you are working with SketchUp, even the free version, the rendering tool Light Up is a pretty cool tool. It takes a little bit of time, but it has built-in lights. You can create materials and you can add reflection capability into it. It's not like you have in Unreal or Unity, where you can put what they call a mirror ball that captures the environment and then allows that to be portrayed on reflective surfaces. It doesn't have that, but it does add kind of a pseudo-reflective capability. More importantly, it does support ICE type lights, and so that you can accurately determine your lighting system if you have the lights you're going to be installing in your home. Great for architects because you can then visualize what a house looks like. But the Light Up is one of the more popular units. The cool thing is it does provide full 360, and that's what I brought into that environment. So once you render it, and keep in mind, and you probably can't see it here, it might be a little blurry, but essentially you have the ability to create a kind of a quick preview mode, and then you can then render it at a more cleaner what do you want to call it, render mode, and you can determine the quality of that, which obviously relates to how much time it will take. But once it renders the scene, you can then move around in it like a first person, as I mentioned before. And like I said, you can create stills as well as animations, so you can put a camera in there. It's a great little tool to work with before you move into VR, because a lot of times I just use this to send static stills to the contractor to say, this is what I found out. You can create measurement points in it and then render them. And this gave me a very good idea of what my tiling was going to look like. Now, one of the things that I didn't put in here, because I just wanted to be simple, if you notice, I didn't actually do 45-degree butts on the ends here, which is actually in the current design. Just overlaid the tiles around it like that. And then also interior is the 3. And this was kind of interesting because we actually did the other sides ourselves. These are little glass 1-inch tiles, and they come in strips, and I literally just cut them out and then use this kind of bonding material to embed them. It's not a very difficult process, which kind of makes me feel a little uncomfortable paying the money we did, considering we probably could have done this ourselves, especially after laying out the design. But I see this being a great tool for doing this kind of stuff. So as mentioned, SketchUp, Light Up's a great tool, and then it also provides a 3D export capability as an FBX file. And I was able to actually, and I don't have a demo here, of taking lighting information from Light Up, because it will bake it in and then bring it directly into Unreal, which is fantastic. One of the things I noticed is that it did embed, especially in the demo, some markers. So if you buy it, or if you buy it through the demo, you get a 10% off. So about $160 is what this plugin costs. Highly recommend it, especially since it has the baking capability to create a 3D mesh model that you can bring in Unreal. Also keep in mind, SketchUp, I brought this in as one large model, not recommended. Break it up into smaller models, because what's important is the way that it creates shadows. And I found that with one large model, I had to create this huge shadow UV map, which is not recommended. So break up your model into smaller components, and there are tools in SketchUp to do that. So highly recommended if you want to move into that. And the other thing that's important, lots of SketchUp models themselves that other architects have put together, even furniture companies like IKEA, and who's that? We bought our furniture from one of them. They also have models, or people have made models. So you can immediately bring that stuff in and see how it looks. So highly recommended. All right, so let's move on to the AR component. So I'm going to jump. I'm going to close this one out, and I'll bring up the new one first. So again, if I crash, you'll know why, but it's not crashing yet, so I'm probably good. So I'm going to bring up what I call my Dark Mini. This is my little mini Mac, and I also have this little plug-in there. So I will bring up the Unity portion of how I created my AR, and then I'm just going to run that in the background. So here we go. So this is now another computer I have up and running that I can show the screen. So one of the things is I'm going to jump to this article from Apple on how to bring ARKit into SceneKit. And this is very important. If you want to show 3D objects in from the ARKit, you have to marry it with SceneKit. And so the code, and this is in, geez, my memory is bad today. It's always bad. Their latest, it's no longer Object-C, it's now their new system. So if you're wondering why this looks different, that's why. So here's your commands, and it's very simple. A few lines of code to bring in the scene node, which is part of SceneKit, to create a little cube and gives you the coordinates, and then it gives you obviously the remarks here. And then here's the rest of it to anchor it in space. And you don't necessarily have to anchor it, but if you want to be able to look around it, it's kind of important. As you can see there, the amount of code to do this is not that bad. And if you're familiar with SceneKit already and know how to import collada files into it, which is what it supports, and convert it into scene files, this can all be done. The thing that I recommend is if you bring in objects, make sure you bake in your ambient occlusion, because it merely makes your models pop out. And because AR uses their own ambient light, which is kind of cool because it realistically derives ambient light from existing light. So it takes existing light through its camera to determine the lighting in the system. And it actually works pretty cool. And if I have some time, and maybe you can keep things busy for me as I set up the, yeah, it did come back. So I may have to set up my username in it real quick, but it's very important, or I could just show you the screen. But this is SceneKit. If you're working in Unity, they already have a plugin, but remember, you have to have the latest version of iOS 11, you have to have Xcode 9, and you have to have a special version of Unity, a beta. Make sure you get the right beta. I guess I looked in the forums already, and people have downloaded the standard Unity build instead of this special version with ARKit. So make sure you do that. Make sure they're all on your Mac OS device. And then from there, it's fairly straightforward. They have a nice little demo that I played with, but then I've already extended it. And then they just tell you in this little article here what is part of the plugin that you can use if you're using C#, which is the development language in Unity. And then if you're an Unreal person, you can then download through GitHub this Unreal specific engine that has the ARKit built. I've downloaded, installed it. I don't have a demo yet for it. I haven't had time yet to work with it. As you can see, I was doing a lot this last week. But I plan to over the weekend. But with this GitHub is it downloads, and then you just need to build it while in your Mac OS system. And we'll see how well it works. I've never really worked with the Unreal Engine in Mac OS because I haven't had a very beefy machine, so it may not work very well. We'll see, and we'll see what I can create there. And this will allow you to create little demos like that wingnut that we saw earlier, and pretty cool. So on that note, let's kind of move back to the screen. As I said, I created a demo in Unity. So you can't see it here, but essentially you get a camera, and you get a couple of AR prefabs that you bring into this. If you work with the demo, it's built into it. I brought in my skeleton structure I call Skinny Pete to see if I could replace it. There is a touch functionality, but you need to make sure that you add that script to your object. If you don't, then you won't be able to move it around. My little demo, I forgot to do that, so we'll see where it shows up. So on that note, let's see if I can bring this up real quick, and I'll do it on a separate screen. Let's see. All right, so let's see what happens. Okay, English, United States. I don't want to use Siri. Set up device. Okay. Well, I'm not going to spend, I'll just hold it up to the camera. And maybe next week I will have it ready. All right, so here's my main camera view. So I did this on my iPad Pro and put iOS 11, and it's a cool operating system, but I did break a few things. So if you're working with applications like the structure sensor, I highly recommend not doing it at this time, especially if you're using Bridge, because it will not allow you to access the camera, which makes it obviously difficult to use Bridge. So here we go. Here's Skinny Pete. So can you see that?
Oh, there he is. Yeah.
And let's see. I should be able to create a surface. Let's see, let it track first.
I don't know if you can see what I'm seeing. It looks like you're looking through. It looks like Skinny Pete is floating in your green screen.
It is. Well, that's because I'm facing the green screen because so it's kind of funny. It's kind of blurry.
Yeah.
Let's bring it in closer. There we go.
Wow, that is interesting.
Yeah. And I don't really have any tracking here. Like I said, I forgot to add the touch functionality, but let me see if I bring this down, if you can see it. We may not be able. It's not finding a plane. I don't have enough space back here, but if it finds a horizontal plane, then it will lock onto it, and then you can actually move around the object. And if you add the touch control to it, then you can place that on your horizontal plane. And in this case, I made him smaller, but I had a full size version of it. Look, it's telling me to set up my TV now. So let's see if I can do that real quick. If it works very quickly, I'll be able to do this on the TV itself and then restart it and then get a better look at it. If not, so the whole point is it was very easy to do. If you have Unity experience, gosh, it's like a no-brainer. You bring in the latest version of the Unity, specifically with the AR kit, and you bring in Xcode 9, because the way Unity works is it creates Xcode compatible code, and then you have to build it in Xcode and then obviously push it to your device. And it's fairly straightforward. I've used it on several occasions now. It works okay. That's how I did my graveyard scene and a couple of other demos. All right, so it's done. So is that cool or what? Let's see. Screen mirroring. Where's he at? No, of course. I don't want a password. I don't want location. I don't really care. So this is all baloney. Okay.
Baloney. Malarkey.
Well, you got to go through all this and you don't have a keyboard. So it's like, okay, so I'm going to go to San Francisco, and actually you're not seeing me, so I'll bring up the screen. So if you don't have a TV, it's like a pain in the butt. Okay, so let's go San Francisco. It's funny, I put in San Francisco. Let's go Redwood City, right? That's on our Pacific there. I don't want that. Okay, I don't want to send analytics to Apple. I agree with your terms. All right, so let's see. Does it show up now? No. And there we go. Yay! Okay, so 0104. Yay! Look, it's there. So this is the new update. So I don't figure out how to swipe them off, but now you just hold down an app and then you can close it. All right, so I'm going to close that out. I'm going to bring up Skinny Pete again, but I'll face it down and see what happens. All right, so you can see this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's see where he's at. There he is. Hi there. Well, like I said, if I would have had the touch functionality, I could reposition him. So let's see if it gets some tracking somewhere. I may not have enough flat surface for it to do that. So let's see if I can move up closer. I can. Kind of cool, huh?
Huh.
So it's floating around, but once you lock it in, then it's these. But should be able to move up close. See? So can you imagine using something like that? Like you take those CT scans of bones of an animal and be able to move up and look at them without printing them. I don't know. It's pretty cool. All right. Well, let me show you this other one, and then I will finish up. So this is Skinny Pete again, but this was done with stereo. So there he is. But now I'll be able to, once I convert my iOS, my iPhone 7 Plus, I'll be able to use this with a headset and be able to walk around the object in a mixed reality system like a HoloLens. And I have the parallax between the two devices is about 6 centimeters, about what your IPD is. So you get accurate 3D. And it's kind of cool because even though you have only a single camera as your background there, the 3D objects pop out from it. So you get full 3D and then it shows up in a regular environment. What I've recommended to companies like Occipital is build in stereo cameras, and then you'll have stereo regular camera images and the 3D object on top of it. And what Occipital does for their occlusion functionality is take the regular camera, but because they have 3D information about the world, they then texture over it. So it gives the real world 3D representation and allows them to occlude. So it's pretty cool how the bridge engine works. But I can see them marrying this with ARKit for even better performance, which is going to be really super, especially with the new iPhone 8, which is going to be about 30-40% better performance over this version. And I have already seen that the iPhone is far superior from a graphics perspective. They just didn't have an AMOLED screen. Supposedly the iPhone 8 will have a AMOLED screen and improve that capability. All right, Chris, I think that's it on my end. Anything
Awesome.
else on yours?
No, but yeah, thanks to obviously all of our listeners and paying attention to. There was a lot to cover today, so thanks for sticking with us. And Occipital and ITSEs and HTC and obviously Form Labs and YouTube and many more found in our show notes that you can find right under the video in YouTube once it's posted.
Right.
And
make sure you subscribe. If you're new to this, subscribe. Please give us a plus up.
Yeah. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, just leave.
Yeah.
No.
No.
I'm just
Hey,
kidding. So
if you don't like it, give us some feedback. Obviously.
Yeah. And we'll catch you next week on All Things 3D.
Bye.